A pleasure to be here with Jashodhara Chakraborti. Ma'am, welcome to the Kolkata Literature Festival.
Thank you for having me.
You're soon going to be part of a session that talks about the novel. Now, if I may ask you a somewhat reductionist question, which is the novel really dead, or is it just learning to live in different forms?
So, Priyam, we were I'm going to hog the mic. So, we've been talking about the novel in its various forms. And before the cameras went on, I was talking to you about the 8-second attention span, which seems to be reducing. Having said which, the novel is still selling. We still see bookshelves filled with brilliant writing. However, I do believe that in addition to the novel in its current present form, where it is one book to be taken, in one gulp, if we bring back serialization, chapter wise, or as we saw it in maybe Dickens's works. I mean, as you probably know, he used to serialize his work. Then I think, given this age, especially digitally, the novel will find a far wider audience than we currently see it enjoying. So I believe that instead of novel completed and a film adaptation, as we tend to see, the full picture should be serialized novel, completed novel published, and a film, hopefully. Because increasingly, I find the digital space extremely exciting, very vibrant, and I'm always surprised as to how engaged people are when very large projects come out in bite-sized chunks. And I think we will see more and more of that as time goes by. So I don't believe the novel is dead, but I think with a little an added pair of wings, shall we say, the novel will find a new lease of life.
Wonderful. What I want to ask you now is, what are you most looking forward to in terms of the angles or the approaches as part of the session that's coming up, given the panel you have?
So Priyam, we've got this very varied set of writers. We don't have our fourth writer, Tuhin Sinha, with us today, but we do have Anupama Mohan, we do have Bernhard Kammel, who's a filmmaker and an architect by training, and curates his own film festival, has designed a light, so tremendously varied artistic mind. And we've got Ifat, and all of them have written their debut novels. So the first thing for me was to kind of have a little chat with each one of them to understand why they chose the flavor they chose, or how they did it, what kind of was their journey, what their routines are, what their motivations were, what specifically the trigger was to write that particular kind of work. And I'm quite astonished with the variety of answers I'm getting. The other interesting thing for me to observe is that none of these writers are necessarily worried about who will read them, or the numbers. So that essential existential question that you asked, first of all, that is not a question in their minds. That is not their motivation. That probably hasn't crossed their minds. So it's again wonderful to see that essentially for them it was really a question that they kind of are looking at answering via the medium of the novel. And those questions are different for different writers, of course, but I suppose we all write when we have a certain question in mind, in our minds, and we feel that it would take a story to kind of arrive at a halfway decent explanation or answer for ourselves. And that's what seemed to emerge. I enjoyed my initial chat thoroughly, and hopefully the rest will come out on stage.
My final question is that, as someone, as you mentioned, who writes primarily for a young adult audience, what are the challenges for writing for this kind of target audience? Because it's an audience that seems to have a lot of different tastes, goes through a lot of different fads, has a wide variety of interests across different genres. What have you found as the most challenging aspect of that? And perhaps in addition to that, what have you found as the most satisfying aspect of that?
So, my friend circle, in popular parlance, they they call me Peter Pan. So apparently, I haven't grown up. Uh, but I believe I have, and I have a certain part of myself that does not talk down to. I don't talk to young adults. I effectively have a chat with them, or at least I would hate it if I suddenly realized and opened my books that I've been talking to them, because then I failed. Um, I think a big challenge is to not preach, not overtly teach. If there's a message that comes out, I believe that message should be for all of us and not just for you children, you teenagers. You need to listen. I here I am dispelling my wisdom. That is obviously the big one to avoid. um I'm often slow with how much youngsters know in terms of technology and how they're kind of. And I come from, I worked in tech for quite a few years, but it's how fast they adapt to change. But on the other hand, I feel that, having lived a bit, that there are other fragilities that perhaps I can write with more sensitivity about for this age group than I would have thought possible earlier on without necessarily preaching. So those things probably come a little bit easier to me. And sometimes, because I hold them in great respect, sometimes I find I quite like to avoid technology because I don't quite know how things will date, or whether I'm already dated. So there's always a possibility that tech is best avoided in my books. But yeah, I mean, I find them exciting. I find them curious. I find that they challenge me all the time, or often enough, and that's good. That's good for me as a writer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. Hope you have a lovely time at KLF.